Amara stood at the back of St. Catherine's Church in her white dress, and the aisle stretching out in front of her looked about a mile long. 3 months. It had been 3 months since the car accident. 3 months since her dad didn't come home. 3 months of planning a wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but felt more like trying to breathe underwater. The music was about to start. Everyone was seated. Michael was waiting at the altar, looking back at her with this expression that said he'd understand if she couldn't do this. Her mom was in the front row, already crying into a tissue, and Amara was supposed to walk down that aisle alone, because the one person who was supposed to walk her down it was gone. She'd almost canceled everything, postponed it indefinitely, but her mom had said something that stuck with her. "Your dad bought a suit for this wedding. He was so excited. He wouldn't want you to wait. He'd want you to be happy." So here she was, in the dress her dad never got to see, about to marry a man her dad had loved like a son, trying not to completely fall apart. Then Pastor Mike did something she wasn't expecting. He stepped up to the microphone and his voice filled the church. "Before we begin, Amara has asked me to make an announcement. 3 months ago, her father Tom passed away unexpectedly, but Tom believed strongly in organ donation. And today, some very special guests are here to walk Amara down the aisle. Gentlemen, would you please come forward?" Amara felt her heart stop. What was happening? Tom Patterson had filled out his organ donor card when Amara was 16. She remembered because they'd been at the DMV together, and she'd asked him why he was checking that box. "If something happens to me," he'd said, "and I don't need these parts anymore, somebody else might." Seems like the decent thing to do. She'd rolled her eyes at him because she was 16 and thought her dad would live forever. Nobody thinks about death at that age. Nobody thinks about the fact that 12 years later you'll be standing at a church wondering how you're supposed to get married without your dad there. The accident had been quick, at least. Drunk driver ran a red light. Tom died on impact. The doctor said he didn't suffer. Amara didn't find that as comforting as people thought she would. Quick or slow, gone was still gone. But Tom's organs had been viable. All of them. And because of that card he'd signed all those years ago, 6 people got calls saying they had a match. 6 people who'd been waiting, some of them for years. 6 people who got to keep living because Tom didn't make it home that Tuesday night. Amara had gotten letters from them, through the donation agency, anonymous at first, thanking the family of their donor. Then later, after the required waiting period, they'd reached out wanting to meet, wanting to thank her in person. She'd met 3 of them for coffee, heard their stories, cried with them. It helped somehow, knowing that pieces of her dad were still out there, still living, still making a difference. But she had no idea what Pastor Mike was about to do. The side door of the church opened and 6 men walked in. Different ages, different heights, different backgrounds. They were all wearing suits, all looking a little nervous. And Amara recognized them, all of them. There was Marcus, the heart recipient, 47 years old, father of 3, had been in heart failure for 2 years before Tom's heart saved him. There was David, who got the lungs. 62, former teacher, could barely walk across a room before the transplant. James and Robert, the kidney recipients, brothers who'd both needed transplants and had been on the list for years. Miguel, who received the liver. 29, same age as Amara, had been dying from a genetic condition. And Arthur, 70, who received the cornea transplants and could see his grandchildren's faces clearly for the first time in a decade. 6 men, 6 pieces of her dad, all alive because Tom had checked a box at the DMV. They walked up to where Amara was standing, and she couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what was happening. Marcus, the one with her dad's heart, stepped forward first. "Your father gave me a second chance at life," he said, his voice thick. "The greatest honor I could imagine is helping give you one of the most important moments of yours. Would you let us walk you down this aisle? Together? All of us carrying pieces of the man who made us whole?" Amara tried to answer, but nothing came out except a sob. She nodded, tears already streaming down her face. The church was dead silent. You could hear people crying, but nobody was saying anything. This wasn't in the program. This wasn't something anyone had expected, but everyone understood immediately what they were witnessing. The wedding march started playing. Amara looked down the aisle at Michael, who was openly crying now. Her mom was holding on to the person next to her for support, and these 6 men, these strangers who weren't strangers, arranged themselves around her. Marcus, with her dad's heart, took her right arm. "I can feel it beating," he whispered. "Strong and steady. Just like him." David with the lungs took her left arm. "Every breath I take is because of him." And they started walking. Slowly. One step at a time down that aisle that had seemed so impossibly long and empty a few minutes ago. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Full of her dad's generosity. Full of his decision to help people even after he was gone. Full of life that continued because he'd chosen to give. You know what? If you believe in the power of giving, in the ripple effects of one person's choice to help others, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what's happening in this church proves that love doesn't end when life does. It just finds new ways to keep beating. They walked in stages. Marcus and David for the first section, then James and Robert took over. The brothers whose lives had been saved by her dad's kidneys walking her through the middle of the church. Then Miguel, who was crying too, walked beside her for several steps. "Your dad was 30 years older than me," he said quietly. "But his liver is keeping me alive, letting me have the future I thought I'd lost." Finally, Arthur, who could see clearly because of the cornea transplants, walked the last section with her. "The first thing I saw when the bandages came off was my granddaughter's face. Really saw it in focus, in color. Because of your father. I wanted to see yours too. Wanted to be here for this." By the time they reached the altar, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. The 6 men stood in a semicircle around Amara, and Pastor Mike was wiping his own eyes. Michael reached out and took Amara's hands, and he was shaking. "I wish I could have met him," Michael said, barely getting the words out. "Your dad, I wish he could be here." Marcus, standing closest, put his hand over his chest, over the heart that had been Tom's. "He is here," Marcus said. "We all brought him. Every piece of him that kept us alive is here right now, walking his daughter down the aisle like he planned to. He didn't miss this. He's just doing it in a way none of us expected." Amara completely broke, full sobbing. Her mom came up from the front row and hugged her. And then the 6 men kind of surrounded them both in this protective circle. These men who were alive, who were fathers and husbands, and sons and brothers because Tom Patterson had checked a box saying someone could use his organs if he didn't need them anymore. The ceremony had to pause for almost 5 minutes while everyone just cried. Happy tears and sad tears all mixed together in this impossible combination of grief and gratitude. When they finally continued, the 6 men took seats in the front rows that Amara had left empty. Honor seats for the pieces of her father that were still there, still living, still present in the most literal way possible. Amara and Michael exchanged vows, and when she got to the part about her dad, she looked right at those 6 men. "My dad taught me about love by showing it every day. He taught me about generosity by giving even when it cost him something. And he taught me about life by making sure his didn't end when his heart stopped beating. He's here today, in every one of you, and I'm grateful, so grateful." The reception afterward was unlike any wedding reception anyone had ever been to. The 6 men and their families sat at a special table. People came up all night wanting to hear their stories, wanting to understand. Amara's mom spent an hour talking to Marcus's wife. 2 mothers connected by the heart that had belonged to one woman's husband and now beat inside the others. Miguel danced with Amara, and when the DJ played the father-daughter dance song she'd picked out months ago, she danced with all 6 of them, each one getting a turn, each one carrying her dad's gift forward. Marcus could feel Tom's heart beating faster during the dance, responding to the emotion and the joy and the music the way Tom's heart had always responded to his daughter's happiness. The photos from that wedding went viral. Bride walked down aisle by organ recipients made national news. Good Morning America did a segment. The organ donation registry saw a massive spike in signups. Thousands of people checked that box because they saw what it meant, saw how one person's choice could save 6 lives, could turn a tragedy into something beautiful. But for Amara, it wasn't about going viral or making news. It was about the fact that her dad kept his promise. He'd always said he'd be there on her wedding day, and he was. Just not in the way anyone expected. He was there in Marcus's heartbeat, in David's breathing, in the way James and Robert's kids would have an uncle because their dad survived, in Miguel's future, in Arthur's ability to see clearly, in all of these ripples spreading out from one decision made at a DMV when Amara was 16. 3 months after losing her father, Amara married the love of her life. And she didn't walk down that aisle alone. She walked it surrounded by proof that endings can be beginnings. that death can give life, that love finds ways to continue even when the person is gone. Her dad walked her down that aisle, all 6 pieces of him, strong and steady, just like he'd always been. Would you become an organ donor? Have you lost someone whose gifts helped others live? Do you believe one person's choice can create ripples of hope that spread further than we can imagine? Share this story. Tag someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to Stories That Matter, because sometimes the most beautiful moments come from the darkest times, and sometimes love literally keeps beating long after the heart stops.